For True Scary Horror Stories, Part 3. Picture this: you're 18, fresh-faced and finally free from the watchful eyes of mom and dad as they jet off to France for a holiday. You've got the whole house to yourself and visions of movie marathons and junk food buffets dance in your head. Life is good, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Our first story comes from a gal who learned the hard way that an empty house isn't always as empty as it seems. Strange noises in the night, belongings moved or missing, doors opening and closing on their own, classic signs of an unwanted visitor. But it wasn't some mischievous ghost playing tricks. Oh no, this intruder was very much alive and very much intent on making our storyteller his victim. It started with small things: a trinket here, a noise there. But soon, the signs became impossible to ignore. Footsteps in empty rooms, shadows moving in the corner of her eye. She convinced herself it was all in her head, just an overactive imagination fueled by one too many slasher flicks. But imagination turned to cold, hard reality when she caught a glimpse of him, the unwanted houseguest, staring at her from the darkness. Panic set in as she realized this was no figment of her imagination. This was real, and she was in danger. In a scene straight out of a horror movie, our hero made a mad dash for safety, heart pounding, adrenaline pumping. She barely escaped with her life, and the intruder was found by police, hiding in wait, armed with a giant knife. It's the stuff nightmares are made of. Our next story takes us to the not-so-friendly skies, where a routine flight turns into a waking nightmare at 30,000 feet. Picture it: you're settling in for a long overnight flight, trying to get comfy in that ever-shrinking airline seat. You drift off to sleep, only to be jolted awake by the feeling of someone's hands all over you. But here's the thing: there's no one in the seat next to you. Confused and creeped out, you try to brush it off and go back to sleep. But it happens again and again. Each time, the phantom hands get bolder, groping and grabbing. You're trapped in a metal tube hurtling through the sky, with no escape from your invisible assailant. Pretty freaky, right? But it gets worse. As if being felt up by a handsy ghost wasn't bad enough, our storyteller looks over to see an entity sitting in the empty seat, leering at them with glowing red eyes. Thankfully, the flight from hell eventually landed, and our poor passenger made it off the plane in one piece, but forever scarred by the experience. Let this be a warning to all you travelers out there: sometimes, the only thing scarier than airplane food is who, or what, you might be sharing a row with. But enough with the ghost stories, let's talk about something really terrifying: hospitals. More specifically, the creepy crawlies that lurk in the dark corners of medical facilities, just waiting to sink their teeth into unsuspecting patients. Our next storyteller is a hospital worker who's seen some stuff that would make even the bravest among us run screaming for the hills. We're talking shadow figures darting around dimly lit corridors, ghostly whispers echoing through empty rooms, and the unshakable feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. But the real kicker? The critters. Yep, you heard me right. This hospital is apparently infested with all manner of creepy crawlies, from rats and roaches to spiders the size of your hand. Can you imagine waking up from surgery to find a giant arachnid staring you down from the ceiling? Talk about a reason to opt for outpatient treatment. And if the idea of sharing your hospital bed with a multi-legged roommate isn't enough to make you swear off ever getting sick again, just wait until you hear about the morgue. According to our insider, strange things happen down there in the dark, cold depths of the hospital basement. Doors slamming, tools moving on their own, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing through the rows of refrigerated corpses. Speaking of things that go bump in the night, our final story takes us to the woods, where a group of campers learned the hard way that sometimes, the great outdoors isn't so great after all. It started out as a typical camping trip: tents, s'mores, spooky stories around the fire. But as the night wore on and the shadows grew longer, things took a turn for the terrifying. Strange noises in the darkness, the unsettling feeling of being watched from the trees. Then, the whispers started: eerie, inhuman whispers that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The campers huddled together in terror, trying to convince themselves it was just the wind playing tricks on them. But the wind doesn't have glowing red eyes that pierce the darkness, watching, waiting. The wind doesn't leave footprints circling the tents, or claw marks on the trees. No, this was something else entirely. Something hungry. Something evil. The campers made it through the night, but only just. And as they packed up their gear with shaking hands and haunted eyes, they swore never to return to those woods again. Because sometimes, the things that lurk in the darkness are far more terrifying than anything we can imagine. And there you have it, 4 true scary stories to keep you up at night, jumping at every creak and shadow. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.